Knowing how to access and develop our imagination as adults is more important now as our world is changing at warp speed and life is much more unpredictable. Creative problem solving and out of the box thinking is not only more valuable, but it is becoming necessary. Make sure to stick around till the end of the video for 5 strategies to strengthen your imagination and creativity, as well as a personal routine of mine that drops me into a creative space without fail. This is From the Couch to the Conversation. I'm your host, Rebecca Molman, trauma therapist turned coach. So let's dive in. Imagination underpins and drives creativity and innovation. For companies where staying cutting edge is important, imagination is a high valued asset. It improves a company's problem solving ability and it keeps them, hopefully, one step ahead of the competition. But being able to use imagination to creatively problem solve in general is an asset for any of us. When we exercise this muscle, we are also increasing our brain activity in new ways which positively impact our memory and our cognition. So, having a developed imagination is good for your career. It makes you more adaptable and resourceful as a human in general, and it has a positive impact on your brain health and dexterity. But what is imagination exactly? When you think of imagination, what is the first thing that pops into your head? It is likely a child with a mix of awe and wonder in their eyes, playing make believe with their imaginary friend, or playing a part in an imaginary scene in the backyard. So incredibly vivid and tangible to them, your calls for dinner do not stand a chance. It is often viewed as something of childhood that, for the most part, fades as we get older and only revisited in moments we catch ourselves daydreaming or being particularly creative. But what if imagination wasn't something that just naturally faded, but rather, as children, it was reallocated and ultimately programmed away from its creative nature into keeping us safe, accepted, and in line? In the words of Deepak Chopra, the best use of imagination is creativity. The worst use of imagination is anxiety. What if there was a way to access its raw power again? Let me explain. Imagination is defined as the ability of the mind to be creative or resourceful. The act or power of forming a mental image of something not present to the senses or never before wholly perceived in reality. To further differentiate, there are 2 kinds of imagination. The first one is synthetic imagination. This is where that you would reassemble already available ideas, items, facts, or principles in a unique new way. The second one is creative imagination, which is where our focus is going to be today. Creative imagination is rooted in the subconscious mind, and it is a rich well of new ideas and concepts. When we are accessing imagination as adults, while daydreaming or in those inspired moments of insight while taking a walk, going for a run, or even in the shower, we are also relaxing back the analytical oversight of this prefrontal cortex. And our brain waves are shifting from beta down into low alpha or even high theta. This is where we are still conscious of the outside world around us and our place in it, but we've relaxed back into a state of flow that brings with it inspired and creative thought. And then in steps the imagination, rooted in the subconscious and our access to its incredible power. It just takes looking around just for a moment to realize that a lot of the creature comforts, in fact, most of them, that you see were not available or even conceived up until relatively recently. They literally came out of the ethers of somebody's imagination. To give you some idea, the internet was created about 33 years ago in 1990, And now, even though it was that very slow dial up, it did change the course of our ability to communicate from that point on. The portable GPS was also created about that time. The first smartphone to be actively marketed and manufactured was in 1999 by a Japanese company, NTT Docomo. And in 1992, the email text message was created and accessible by the average public. And the list goes on, but you get the point. It took someone thinking outside of what was already known, and in some cases called crazy over and over and over again, until what they dared to imagine was realized in material form. As children, we all come into this world with abundant imagination. So, why does it seem that some people can access imagination more than others? Remember, when I mentioned earlier that as adults we relax back from beta brainwaves and away from the prefrontal cortex running the show into those low alpha and possibly high theta brainwave states. Well, as children, we live in this low alpha, high theta brainwave state constantly, also known as the subconscious or waking hypnotic state. And as the brain develops and we get older, if access to the imagination and the subconscious in general isn't exercised, we lose contact with it and only stumble across the threshold almost by accident. Comments like stop daydreaming, focus, get your head out of the clouds, teach a child that that type of thinking is not appropriate, that it's not valued, and it should be stopped. A different thief of a childhood's imagination is fear and self preservation. If the majority of the child's experiences are harnessing every ounce of creativity to identify, is the environment safe or not? Where are they going to get their next food? Where are they going to have shelter? It does not have the luxury to allocate the energy in the growth oriented creative way. It is focused on survival, which obviously comes first. Then there is the example of the child that was encouraged to dream and explore ideas. This child was not preoccupied with safety and survival, nor was it shut down. There isn't fear built into this natural behavior. So, as development happens, that pattern gets locked in, so to speak. And unless imagination and creativity are proactively exercised, engaged with, and possibly in some cases learned for the first time, it will stay abbreviated and underdeveloped. Like any skill, it must be intentionally practiced. If you know that as a child, the power of your imagination was not encouraged or it needed to be used for safety or survival, just know that it might take a little bit more work, but with diligence and desire, you'll be able to unwind the fear and its programming. So, what are some ways that you can increase and strengthen your imagination as an adult? First and foremost, as a trauma therapist and my work with hypnotherapy and the subconscious, I always encourage people to seek out someone that is skilled in identifying the conditioned patterns that are restricting you fully being able to access the power of your imagination. And make sure that it is aligned with your goals, dreams, and desires. If your imagination is already hardwired to look for danger and fueled by fear and scarcity, then you are likely struggling with more stress than necessary, worry, and racing thoughts. If your imagination resources are hardwired to draw inside the lines all of the time for fear of rejection, criticism, or judgment, then you likely have a sense that the world is much larger and much more beautiful and textured than your programming is allowing you to experience. So I really encourage you to find someone that is skilled in unwinding the old programming so you can create more space for the techniques we're going to go through to work more efficiently. Number two, question what your senses are telling you. Only a fraction of the data or information that you are receiving from your senses is actually digested in its raw form. The majority of what you are perceiving as an adult is actually being filled in by the brain from your past experiences. So slow it down a bit and see if your experience with what you are seeing, eating, hearing, drinking, or possibly even your experience with your own voice or movement in a vehicle. How does it change as you slow down? Are you able to absorb more data that's coming in through your senses? This helps to remind you and reinforce that there is more to the experience that you are having that meets the eye. Number three, take a walk or a run if that's more your jam. This increases creative output by 60%, which is rooted in your imagination. Again, this could possibly be the natural drop in brainwaves that happens and having more access to your imagination, creativity, and innovation. Number four, put yourself in environments where you are able to soak in the vastness of the world or where natural states of awe and wonder are inspired. This would be places with large horizons, like a shore looking over a mountain range, or even a desert that goes on and on forever. Stargazing is certainly a time tested activity for this. What you are doing is putting yourself in environments that encourage you to look outside of yourself, to think outside of yourself. Number five, try something new. Put yourself in new environments and having new experiences. This teases the brain to create new neural connections because it is out of its normal operating system and out of its comfort zone. And then number six, my own personal secret sauce. When I know I need to access imagination or a flow state that is creative and inspired, there is a routine I use to make sure that I can drop in when I need to and be as efficient and inspired as possible with the time that I have. So, first, I do something with my body, usually my large muscles. Right now, that is a 30 or 45-minute run. And this helps to flush out any built up stress hormones that I've accumulated in my body and then clear my head up a little bit. When after that, then I take a quick warm shower for about 15 minutes and I make sure I double my exhales compared to my inhales while I'm in the shower. And this is a technique that manually down regulates your nervous system from that stress sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. So it just manually helps to downshift and calm my body, calm my mind. And at this point, my body feels pretty good. Any cobwebs or looping thoughts that have been cleared out of my mind when I sit down to work. Then I make sure to put on something called binaural beats in the background to listen to. And what binaural beats is music that matches certain brainwave frequencies. And remember, we want those brainwaves to be low alpha, high theta. So any alpha wave binaural beats in the background will encourage your brain to match that frequency. And the last thing that I do is try to schedule where I know there's not going to be any distractions. So every time you get distracted, after you drop into that low, it takes a moment to get down into that low alpha, high theta state. Once you're there, if you get pulled out by a distraction, whether it's your cell phone or a notification on the computer going off, maybe a kiddo, it's really important to eliminate those distractions because each time that happens, it's pulling you out of that flow state back into beta brain waves, kind of our analytical thinking mind, which it takes time to get back down into flow. For me, it takes about 5 to 7 minutes. For other people, it could take upwards of 15 or 20 minutes to get back. So, eliminating distractions is also incredibly helpful and for me necessary. These things have worked really, really well for me, and I hope that they're helpful for you just to hear about my own routine and how I have employed some of these processes. And remember that we're all different. So play with these different techniques, see what works for you, and come up with your own strategy to be able to access and work that tool of imagination in your own way. So I have hoped that you have seen how important it is to tap into your sense of imagination and make sure it's aligned with your goals, dreams, and desires. It is a very, very powerful tool, personally as well as professionally. And it brings so much more personal depth to life. Fueled by curiosity, it might even be able to dreamscape a better tomorrow for all of us. I hope you learned something and were inspired to unwind some of the things holding your imagination and creative potential back, as well as play with some new ways to exercise this powerful tool in your life. If you know somebody that needs to hear this, please share, like, and subscribe. If you're listening in on a podcast, make sure to hit that follow button. And I'll see you in the next video.